When I opened the front door to my house that afternoon, I never imagined my own daughter would be waiting for me, with her eyes blazing with fury. Shelby stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, and her face completely distraught. Next to her, Trevor was pacing back and forth like a caged animal, cell phone in hand, and the veins in his neck bulging with rage. They did not even let me close the door. "Have you lost your mind?" Shelby screamed, marching toward me with furious strides. "My husband almost had a heart attack at the ATM." Her words bounced off the walls, laced with a venom I knew too well. But this time it did not sting as much as before. Trevor stepped closer, brandishing his phone in front of my face. "Where is the money, Eleanor? What did you do?" "The card is empty. There is not a single dollar." His voice was a desperate roar, as if something that belonged to him by right had been snatched away. But that money was mine, my social security, the fruit of 42 years working at the textile mill, getting up before dawn, sacrificing my back and my knees. I placed my purse on the entry table with a calmness that even surprised me. "I changed my bank information," I said firmly, looking them both directly in the eye. "Now my social security goes to a new card, one that only I control." The silence that followed was deafening. Shelby opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Trevor froze, his face cycling from bright red to a ghostly white. It was as if the world had stopped for an instant, that second before the explosion that we all know is coming. But no one can stop. "What? What did you say?" Shelby stammered, clutching her hand to her chest. "Mom, you cannot do that. We depend on that money. We have expenses. We have debts to pay." "Debts?" I repeated, feeling something inside me harden like steel. "Are you talking about Trevor's new truck, or the vacation to Miami last month? Or maybe that giant 70-inch television you bought the week before?" Trevor took a step forward, his index finger pointed at me accusingly. "You live in our house. You eat our food. It is the least you can do to contribute." His words were spat out, loaded with a contempt he no longer tried to hide. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. Our house. How strange that he called it that now, when the property papers still held my deceased husband's name and mine. This house that we bought with so much effort, brick by brick, sacrifice after sacrifice, was now their house in my son-in-law's vocabulary. "This is my house, Trevor," I said in a voice I did not recognize as my own. Too firm, too sure. "You came to live here 3 years ago, remember? When you lost your apartment because you could not pay the rent." Shelby let out a choked cry as if I had slapped her. "I cannot believe you are talking to me like this. I am your daughter, your only daughter. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us." Tears began to roll down her cheeks, but they were tears of rage, not sadness. I knew them well. I had seen them so many times when she did not get what she wanted. "Everything you have done for me." The words came out colder than I intended. "Tell me, Shelby, what exactly have you done for me?" She stammered, searching for arguments in the air. We give you a roof. We take care of you. You take care of me?" I interrupted her, feeling decades of silence shattering inside me like a burst dam. "You take care of me when you wake me up at 6, 0 inches the morning to make breakfast. When I have to wash your clothes, iron Trevor's shirts, clean the bathroom you leave dirty. That is taking care of me?" Trevor punched the wall with his fist, shaking my wedding photo that had been hanging there for 45 years. "You are ungrateful, a selfish old woman. Without us, You would be rotting in some rundown nursing home. His words should have hurt me. 6 months ago, they would have destroyed me. But today, after what I had lived through, the humiliations I had swallowed in silence, the nights crying in my room while they laughed in the living room, spending my $1,500 monthly on their whims, those words bounced off me without causing any damage. "Maybe you are right," I said, picking up my purse again. "Maybe I am a selfish old woman, but this selfish old woman just got her freedom back." Shelby sank onto the sofa, the same sofa I had paid for when theirs broke. Her hands were trembling as she covered her face. "You cannot do this to us, Mom. Please. Trevor has medical treatments. We have financial commitments. You are going to ruin us." "I am going to ruin you," I repeated slowly, letting each word settle in the thick air of the room. "Is not that ironic? For 3 years, you have lived off my social security, every dollar I earned with my sweat and hard work. And now that I decide that money should be mine again, I am the one who is ruining you." Trevor approached again, but this time there was something different in his eyes. It was not just rage anymore. It was fear. Real fear of losing his income source, his personal ATM that had worked for so long without protest. "Eleanor, let us be reasonable," he said, trying to soften his tone but not quite succeeding. "We can come to an agreement. You do not have to do this so drastic." I looked at this man who had entered my family 7 years ago with his charming smile and his promises to take care of my daughter, the same man who now saw me only as a source of money, as a resource to exploit until nothing was left of me. "The only agreement we are going to have," I said as I walked toward the stairs leading to my room, "is that starting today, my money is only mine, and if that bothers you, well, the door is open. You know where it is." I left them there in the middle of the living room with their mouths open and their plans crumbling. I climbed each step feeling an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. It had taken me 69 years to learn this lesson, that love cannot be bought, that real family does not exploit you, and that it is never, ever too late to reclaim your dignity. Behind me, I heard Shelby sobbing and Trevor cursing under his breath. But for the first time in 3 years, those sounds no longer broke my heart. They only reminded me why I had made the most important decision of my life that morning when I walked into the bank and said the words that would change everything. "I want to change my bank information. I need a new card, one that no one else can touch." It all started 3 years ago at the funeral of my husband, Frank. I remember the smell of white carnations mixed with the aroma of coffee the neighbors had brewed for the attendees. I remember Shelby's hands clutching mine as I watched the casket descend, taking with it 45 years of my life, of shared laughter, of silent breakfasts, of silly arguments and sweet reconciliations. Frank died of a massive heart attack on a Tuesday morning. He was watering the garden plants, those roses he loved so much, when he simply collapsed. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. The doctor told me he did not suffer, that it was instant. But I suffered. God, how I suffered. The first months in that empty house were a silent hell. Every corner screamed his absence. His coffee mug in the cabinet, his slippers by the bed, his toothbrush that I did not have the courage to throw away until 6 months later. I would wake up in the pre-dawn hours expecting to find him in the kitchen reading the newspaper, and the reality would hit me each time, as if it were the first. Shelby came to visit me often at first. "Mom, you cannot stay here alone," she would say, sitting on the living room sofa where Frank and I had watched so many movies. "Come live with us for a while, just until you recover." Trevor would nod beside her, with that smile that then seemed genuine to me, full of filial concern. I resisted for weeks. This house was my sanctuary, the place where I had raised Shelby, where every wall held a memory. But the loneliness weighed like lead in my bones. The nights grew endless. The silence was so thick I could touch it. So I finally accepted. Just for a while, I told them, until I learned to be alone again. I packed 2 suitcases with the essentials, clothes, a few photos, the green knitted shawl Frank had given me for our 20th anniversary. I closed my front door with a knot in my throat, promising myself I would be back soon. How naive I was, how blind I was. The first months at Shelby's place were bearable. She worked at a boutique downtown, and Trevor was supposedly looking for a job after being fired from the insurance company where he worked. I helped with the housework. I cooked. I cleaned. It made me feel useful, necessary. I thought I was contributing to the family while healing my broken heart. But things began to change subtly. First, it was Trevor who asked me to borrow $200 for a course that, according to him, would help him get a job. "I will pay you back next month, Eleanor, I promise." He never returned it. Then Shelby needed $300 to pay off a credit card debt. "It is an emergency, Mum. If I do not pay, they will charge me sky-high interest." I never saw that money back either. At first, I did not care. They were my family, my only family. If my money could help them, why not? Frank always said that family came first, that money came and went, but blood ties were eternal. I believed those words as if they were gospel. One day, Trevor arrived with a proposal. "Eleanor, I have been thinking. It would be easier if your Social Security went directly into our account. That way we can manage the household expenses better. You will not have to worry about a thing. We will take care of everything." He said it so casually, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. Shelby supported the idea immediately. "It is true, Mum. It is simpler that way. Besides, you are not good with numbers. Remember when Dad took care of all the finances? We will do the same. We will take care of you." Their words sounded reasonable, wrapped in concern and love, or what I thought was love. I signed the papers at the bank without reading the fine print. Trustingly, I gave them access to my card. I handed over control of my $1,500 monthly without asking questions. After all, I was living under their roof, eating their food, using their electricity. It was only fair, right? It was the right thing to do. The transformation was gradual, so slow that I did not realize it until I was already trapped. Trevor began treating me less like a mother-in-law and more like a servant. "Eleanor, breakfast is taking too long. I am in a hurry. Eleanor, these shirts are not ironed well. Do them again. Eleanor, you cleaned the bathroom poorly. There are still smudges on the mirror." Shelby stopped asking me how I was. Conversations about my day, my feelings, my grieving process simply disappeared. Now we only talked about chores, shopping I needed to do, meals I had to prepare. I had become a shadow in that house, a useful ghost who cooked, cleaned, and paid bills without complaining. On weekends, they would go out to expensive restaurants without inviting me. "Those places are too noisy, Mum. At your age, you need rest," Shelby would say while putting on a coral-colored dress that I knew had cost at least $300. Dollars that came from my social security. I stayed home eating leftovers, watching television in the small room they had assigned me in the back of the house. One day, I found a forgotten receipt on the kitchen table. It was from a jewelry store in the most exclusive mall in the city. Trevor had bought Shelby a gold necklace for $1,200. My heart sank. While I wore the same worn-out clothes from years ago, while I denied myself basic treats like a new book or a pastry from the bakery I liked, they were indulging in luxuries with my money. I started paying more attention. The nights out, the new clothes that appeared in their closets every week, the sports car Trevor bought with his savings, even though he had not worked a single day in 2 years. It all fit together like a macabre puzzle. My social security was not being used for household expenses. It was funding a lifestyle they could not afford on their own. I tried to talk to Shelby one night while we were washing dishes. "Honey, I have been thinking that maybe I should go back to my house. Enough time has passed since your dad died. I need to learn to live alone." My hands trembled as I rinsed a plate. She looked at me with cold eyes, so different from the warm eyes of the child I had raised. "Go back to your house? Mum, do not be silly. That house is neglected. Besides, how are you going to live alone at your age? What if you fall? What if you get sick? You are safe here. You are cared for here." But there was no love in her voice, only calculation. That night, I cried in my small room, hugging the pillow to muffle the sobs. I missed Frank with an intensity that tore me in two. He never would have allowed this. He would have defended me. But Frank was dead, buried under cold ground, and I was alone, facing a reality I did not want to accept. My own daughter, the baby I had nursed, the child whose scraped knees I had patched up after every fall, the teenager whose tears I had dried after every heartbreak, was using me. She was squeezing me like an inexhaustible resource, a source of money with no feelings, no dignity, no value beyond what I could provide economically. But I still did not have the courage to do anything. I still clung to the hope that things would improve, that it was just a difficult phase, that the love we once shared would resurface. I lied to myself every morning when I woke up, every night when I went to bed. I swallowed the humiliation because the alternative was accepting that I had lost not only my husband but also my daughter. Months passed, and the situation only got worse. Trevor did not even pretend to look for a job anymore. He would get up at noon, eat the breakfast I prepared without even saying thank you, and spend the rest of the day on the sofa watching sports or playing video games. Shelby would come home from work, and instead of helping me with dinner, she would shut herself in her room to talk on the phone with her friends about their next vacation. One Friday night, while I was cleaning the kitchen after they went out to dinner, I found the bank statement thrown in the trash can. I pulled it out with trembling hands and unfolded it under the lamplight. My eyes scanned the lines of expenses: restaurants, bars, clothing stores, spas, gyms. In a single month, they had spent $2,800. My social security was $1,500. The rest came from credit cards I did not know existed, cards that were being paid with my money from the following month. I sat down in the kitchen chair, feeling the world spin around me. They were getting into debt, living beyond their means, and using my social security as a bottomless pit to cover their excesses. How much longer could this last? What would happen when I could not pay their debts anymore? Would they throw me out onto the street like an old rag that was no longer useful? That night, lying in my narrow bed, staring at the cracked ceiling of my small room. I made a decision. I needed to know exactly what was happening with my money. I needed to understand the magnitude of the problem before I could do anything about it. And above all, I needed to recover at least a little of the control I had lost over my own life. The next morning, I got up before dawn, as always. I made coffee, set the breakfast table, cooked scrambled eggs and toast, everything on autopilot while my mind worked on a plan. I needed information. I needed proof. I needed to see with my own eyes the extent of the theft they were committing against me. When Shelby and Trevor got up, I had already made a decision. I need to go to the bank today, I announced while pouring coffee. I have to sort out some matters regarding your father's account that I left pending. Trevor looked up from his phone with an instant look of alarm. The bank? Why do you need to go to the bank? If you need something, I can go for you. His tone was too anxious, too controlling. They are personal matters, I replied firmly, surprising myself. Documents I need to sign, things about the inheritance. I lied without batting an eye. And the lie came so naturally that it almost scared me. Shelby exchanged a worried glance with Trevor. Mom, I do not think it is a good idea for you to go out alone. Let me go with you. I get off work at 3. We can go together. But I knew if she came with me, I would never get the answers I needed. I will go alone, I said. And there was something new in my voice, something that made them draw back slightly. 10. 0 inches the morning. Do not worry about me. I grabbed my purse and left the house before they could protest further. The bank was 20 minutes away by bus. During the ride, my heart was pounding so hard I thought all the passengers could hear it. What was I going to discover? Did I really want to know the truth? But it was too late to turn back. I had crossed an invisible line that morning, and there was no return. At the bank, a young executive named Brenda served me with a professional smile. Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you? Her eyes were kind, non-judgmental, and that gave me the courage I needed. I need to see all the transactions on my account for the last 3 years, I said, my voice barely a whisper. All the deposits and all the withdrawals. I want a complete statement. Brenda nodded and began typing on her computer. After a few minutes, the printer spat out page after page of information. When it finished, there was a stack of nearly 50 pages of paper in front of me. Do you want to review it here, or would you prefer to take it home? She asked. I will review it here, I replied, taking the stack with hands that barely trembled. I sat in one of the chairs in the waiting area and began to read, and with every page I turned, I felt my heart growing smaller, harder, colder. The numbers did not lie. In 3 years, they had spent more than $60,000 of my Social Security. $60,000. The money I had earned with 42 years of work, getting up before the sun, sacrificing my health, my knees that now creaked with every step, my back that ached every night. I saw $500 withdrawals at electronic stores, $800 at luxury restaurants, $1,000 at a jewelry store, $2,000 at a travel agency, purchases and more purchases, luxuries and more luxuries, all paid for with my effort, my pain, my dignity. But the worst was not the big expenses. The worst were the small details that revealed the true nature of their betrayal. $20 withdrawals at bars at 2, 0 inches the morning, $50 at beauty salons every week, $150 on clothes every month, while I wore the same 3 worn dresses I had brought from my house, while I refused to buy medication for my arthritis because I did not want to be a burden. They were walking around in new clothes and perfect manicures. If this story of betrayal and standing up for yourself touches you, please subscribe to the channel and share this video. Your support helps me to grow and continue telling important stories like mine. Brenda approached after an hour, a look of concern on her face. "Are you all right, ma'am? Can I get you a glass of water?" It was then I realized that tears were rolling down my cheeks without me noticing. "I am fine," I lied, wiping the tears with the back of my hand. I need to know something. Is it possible to change my bank information, to have my social security deposit into a new account, a card that only I have?" Brenda's eyes lit up with understanding. She had seen this before. "I knew it, by the way," she nodded. "Of course, it is possible, ma'am. And I can help you right now if you wish. I just need to see your ID and sign some forms." My hand moved toward my purse almost on instinct. "Yes," I said, and my voice sounded firmer than I felt. "Yes, I want to do it now. I want a new account, a new card, something only I can touch." Brenda worked quickly and efficiently. She explained every step of the process, every form I signed. In less than an hour, I had a completely new account with a card that would arrive at my address in 5 business days. My social security for the next month would deposit directly there, in a place where Shelby and Trevor could not reach it. "Is there anything else I can do for you?" Brenda asked when we finished. There was something in her eyes, a mixture of admiration and sadness, as if she understood exactly what was happening. "Yes," I said, surprising myself again. "I want extra copies of these bank statements, 3 complete sets. If I was going to do this, if I was going to reclaim my life, I needed to be prepared for what came next." I left the bank with my purse feeling heavier, carrying not only the papers, but also a new determination. The sun was shining brighter than when I had entered. Or maybe it was just that I could see it better now. For 3 years, I had lived in a fog of pain and manipulation, but that fog was dissipating, revealing an ugly but liberating truth. On the bus ride back, I hugged my purse to my chest and looked out the window. We passed the bakery where Frank used to buy me sweet rolls on Sundays. We passed the park where Shelby had learned to ride her bicycle. We passed the church where we had been married 45 years ago. All those memories, all those beautiful recollections. And yet here I was, a 9-year-old woman, having to protect myself from my own daughter. When I got home, Shelby was at work and Trevor was snoring on the sofa, the television tuned to some football game. I silently went up to my room and hid the papers at the bottom of my suitcase beneath my underwear and old socks. No one would look there. No one would think that I, the foolish old woman who let herself be manipulated, would have the cunning to hide evidence. I sat on my bed and looked around my small room, the peeling cream-colored walls, the window that faced the back alley, the tiny closet where my clothes barely fit. This was not a room for a beloved guest. It was a servant's quarters, a place to keep the employee who cooked, cleaned, and paid the bills. But in 5 days, when my new card arrived, everything would change. In 5 days, I would begin to recover not only my money, but something much more valuable: my dignity, my self-worth, my right to exist as something more than a source of income for people who had forgotten what it meant to love. The next 5 days were the longest of my life. Every morning I woke up wondering if that would be the day the card arrived. Every time I heard the mail carrier, my heart jumped. But I had to act normal, not raise suspicions, continue to be the submissive and obedient Eleanor they expected. Trevor noticed something different about me on the third day. I was serving dinner when he looked at me with narrowed eyes. "You have been weird lately, Eleanor. Is something wrong?" His tone was accusatory, as if I had no right to have thoughts of my own. "I am fine," I replied, keeping my eyes on the plate of chicken I was serving. "Just a little tired. You know, old age." I let my shoulders slump a little more, let my voice sound weaker. It was a role I had played for 3 years. A few more days would not make a difference. Shelby came home that night with shopping bags again. I recognized the logos of the expensive stores at the mall. "Mom, I need you to iron this lavender dress for tomorrow. I have an important dinner with friends," she said, dropping the bags in my room as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I looked at that dress that had probably cost $200 of my Social Security, and something inside me broke definitively. "Why do not you iron it yourself?" The words came out before I could stop them. Shelby turned to me with wide eyes. "What did you say?" Her voice had a dangerous tone, the same tone she used when she was a teenager and did not get what she wanted. "Nothing," I rushed to say, hating myself for my cowardice, but knowing I had to wait. Only 2 more days until the card arrived. 2 more days and I could stop pretending. "I will iron it after I wash the dishes." The 4th day was when I almost ruined everything. I was cleaning Shelby and Trevor's room, something I did every week, even though it killed my back, when I saw an open envelope on the desk. It was a statement from a credit card I did not know about. Curiosity overcame caution, and I pulled it out of the envelope. The balance was $15,000. $15,000 of debt on a card I had never seen. I checked the charges with trembling hands. Restaurants, travel, clothes, jewelry. A month at the beach they had taken last summer while I stayed home alone. The giant screen television in the living room. The new dining room furniture. Everything had been bought on credit. And I knew exactly who was paying those credit bills every month. Or rather trying to pay them, because it clearly was not enough. They were sinking into debt while draining my Social Security. And when my money was no longer enough, what would they do? Would they kick me out? Would they force me to sell my house to pay for their whims? I heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly put the envelope back where I had found it. Trevor entered the room and found me dusting the nightstand with visibly trembling hands. "What are you doing in here?" he asked suspiciously. "Cleaning," I replied without looking at him. Like every Thursday, he stood in the doorway for a long, uncomfortable moment before grunting something unintelligible and leaving. I left that room with my heart pounding so hard I thought I was going to faint. It had been close. Too close. The 5th day, finally, the card arrived. I heard the mail carrier drop the mail in the box around 11. 0 inches the morning. Shelby was at work and Trevor had gone out to meet some friends, probably to spend more money they did not have. I was alone. I ran to the door with an energy I had not felt in years. My hand was trembling so much I could barely open the mailbox. There it was, among the bills and junk mail, an official bank envelope with my name. Only my name, not Shelby's, not Trevor's, mine. I opened it with clumsy fingers and pulled out the new card. It was silver, gleaming under the sunlight, and it felt like freedom in my hands. My name was elegantly engraved, Eleanor Hayes. It was not just a card, it was a key to a new life. I slipped the envelope into my purse and went back inside the house. I had to activate the card, change the PIN, make sure everything worked correctly. I called the number in the instructions and followed every step meticulously. When the automated voice confirmed that my card was active and that my next Social Security deposit would arrive in 2 days, I felt a wave of relief so intense that I had to sit down. 2 days. In 2 days, when Trevor tried to withdraw money from the ATM, as he always did on the first of the month, there would be nothing. The account would be empty. And then the confrontation I had been postponing for 3 years would come. That night, Shelby came home in a bad mood. She had had a difficult day at the boutique, she said, although I suspected it had more to do with a customer returning something she had bought with my money. "Mom, what is for dinner?" she asked without even greeting me. "Roast chicken and mashed potatoes," I replied, putting the plates on the table like every Thursday. Trevor arrived shortly after, smelling of beer and with glassy eyes. He sat down at the table without washing his hands and began serving himself without waiting for me to sit down. "This chicken is dry," he complained after the first bite. "Cannot you cook something decent for once?" Something inside me hardened. I looked at that plate of food I had prepared with ingredients bought with my money, on a stove I had paid for in a house that was mine. "If you do not like it," I said in a voice I did not recognize as my own, "you can cook it yourself tomorrow." The silence that followed was absolute. Shelby stopped chewing and looked at me as if I had grown a second head. Trevor dropped his fork with a metallic clang against the plate. "What did you just say?" he asked in a dangerously low voice. "What you heard," I replied, standing up from the table. "I am tired. I am going to my room." And I left, leaving them with their mouths open, feeling their looks of disbelief fixed on my back. In my room, I sat on the bed and took the new card out of my purse. I held it under the lamplight and saw my distorted reflection on its silver surface. This woman in the reflection, with her wrinkles and grey hair, with her hands stained from years of work, this woman was me, and this woman had just taken the first real step toward her freedom. I hid the card in the same place where I had hidden the bank statements. Tomorrow would be Saturday, the day after tomorrow, Sunday, and on Monday, the first of the month, when my Social Security deposited into the new account and not the old one, my real battle would begin. But this time, I would not be fighting empty-handed. This time, I would have something they had underestimated for too long, my own will to survive. I went to bed that night with a mixture of fear and anticipation. I knew what was coming would be ugly, painful, probably devastating, but I also knew there was no other option. I had reached the end of a road, and the only possible direction was forward, toward the light, toward freedom, even if the price was losing the only people I had left in this world. Because in the end, what value did those people have if they only saw me as a means to finance their lives? What kind of love was that which only existed as long as the money flowed? The time had come to find out if there was anything real left beneath all that greed, or if I had lost my daughter much earlier than I wanted to admit. The weekend passed in a strange tension. Shelby and Trevor barely spoke to me. They ate in silence when I was present, or they just shut themselves in their room with food they bought out. The house felt like a minefield where any movement could detonate an explosion. But I had made a decision, and I was not going to back down. For the first time in 3 years, I bought food only for myself. I put my things on a separate shelf in the refrigerator with a note that said, Eleanor. I felt ridiculous doing it like a distrustful roommate, but it was necessary. I needed to establish boundaries that should have existed from the beginning. On the third day after the confrontation, I heard Shelby crying in her room. My motherly instinct urged me to go up, to comfort her, to fix things, as I had always done. But I forced myself to stay seated in the kitchen, drinking my tea, reminding myself that comforting her now would be surrendering. It would be returning to the same old pattern where I gave up. I spent the next 3 days observing them like specimens under glass. They kept to Victoria's room, voices rising and falling behind closed doors. I positioned myself near the air vents, near the doors, wherever sound travelled. Old house, thin walls, secrets that leaked. On Thursday morning, I heard Marcus on the phone. Competency evaluation, financial manipulation by the daughter. She deliberately poisoned him. Yes, I can document his erratic behavior. They were building their narrative, painting me as the villain, them as a concerned family, protecting an old man from himself. I documented everything, noting snippets of conversation, marking dates and times, photographing the financial records I obtained, the bank statements that showed transfers of money from my accounts to theirs, purchases made on the credit cards I had given them, the paper trail of dependency. Patterns emerged. 15 months ago, a $50,000 transfer for emergency house repairs that were never done. 8 months ago, a $70,000 withdrawal for an undocumented investment opportunity. 3 months ago, Marcus suddenly had a new car in his name paid for in cash. My money, their lifestyle, my trust, their exploitation. On February 20th, sitting in my study, I called the law firm of Arthur Finch, the lawyer my banker recommended for complex family matters. The receptionist's voice was efficient and professional. I need a consultation regarding potential fraud, financial elder exploitation, and attempted. I paused, choosing my words. Harm by family members. Typing sounds on her end. Can you come in on Thursday? What time does 2:00 inches the afternoon work for you? I'll be there. I hung up the phone. Through the window, I saw Victoria and Marcus in the backyard, engrossed in an urgent conversation, planning their next move. I will too. I opened my laptop and started a new document. Financial manipulation timeline. Evidence log. The first entry started with a date 15 months ago. The cursor blinked on the blank document waiting. I typed the header, Financial Manipulation Timeline, Evidence Log. Below it, I began listing everything I remembered, tracing back through 18 months of trust slowly eroded into exploitation. March 2024, transfer of $50,000 for emergency house repairs. I checked my bank records, found the transaction, and cross-referenced it with my calendar. No contractor had visited the house that month. no permits were filed. The house looked exactly the same. First lie, first theft. In May 2024, they had scheduled a lawyer consultation. I searched my email and found the confirmation. They had told me it was about estate planning to simplify things for everyone. Now I understood what they really wanted. Access, control, signatures on documents I never authorized. The list grew. Each entry a small wound that had seemed insignificant at the time. Taken together, they formed a pattern that looked like premeditated theft. I worked until midnight, then reviewed everything at dawn on February 21st. I printed 3 copies, organized them in labeled folders, and dressed in my best suit, projecting competence, not victimhood. The drive downtown to Miami took 40 minutes. The Brickell Financial District rose in glass towers that caught the morning sun and reflected it like mirrors. I parked in the underground garage, took the elevator to the 24th floor, and carried my folder like evidence, which it was. Arthur Finch's office occupied a corner with views of Biscayne Bay. The receptionist, professional and efficient, led me to a conference room where the city spread out below me like a map of territory to be defended. Arthur entered promptly at 2:40 seconds. Impeccable suit. A gaze that evaluated without judging. We shook hands. I liked that he didn't waste time on unnecessary formalities. I opened the folder and slid the documents across the polished wood. Everything I can document, timeline, hospital medical records, testimony. He read without interruption, asking incisive questions and taking notes with a fountain pen that deliberately scratched the notepad. Florida Statute 825, he finally said. Exploitation of an elderly person. It covers attempts to gain control of assets through coercion, manipulation, or incapacitation. He reviewed my file. This shows a clear pattern. The restaurant incident, the attempt to drug the person, that is a felony. But we need more documentation of their current behavior. What kind of documentation? Their current actions, conversation where they discuss strategies, attempts at manipulation. You mentioned they still live in your house. I nodded and he continued. I'm going to recommend a private investigator, Serena Kim. She's an ex-police detective specializing in elder fraud cases. She can set up surveillance and document everything legally. He wrote a name and number on his card and slid it across. Call her. Get proof of what they're doing now, not just what happened before. Then we talk about protective trusts, restraining orders, and a potential civil lawsuit. I left with a feeling I hadn't felt in weeks. Validation. This wasn't paranoia. This was legitimate protection. 4 days of close observation followed. I wrote everything down. Their whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. The way they watched me like predators stalking an injured prey. Marcus's hand was always on Victoria's shoulder. Control disguised as affection. On Monday morning, February 25th, I drove to Pinewood. Serena Kim's office was in a modest building, professional degrees on the walls, no wasted space. She looked to be in her late 32nd with a penetrating gaze and a direct manner.